Hey, this is Steve Sims. Welcome back to another episode of The Art of Making Things Happen, the podcast. Today, I've got Kent Clothier on. If you know anything about real estate, you know Kent Clothier. He's probably been on every major stage there is within that and entrepreneurship, building businesses. The guy built a $1.8 billion business by the time he was 30, then lost it again, which gave him his biggest education. The guy is sharp. We talk about being an introvert. We talk about modern influencers and gurus, talk about coaching, who needs it, why they need it, and how to see through the fakes in there. Great conversation. One of my favorite. 30 minutes will be a great asset to your life. So tune in and listen to Kent Clothier. Hey, Kent, welcome to the show.
Hey, man, thanks for having me. Glad we finally connected.
Yeah, I know. I was actually saying just before this that there's lots of people that I watch on the internet, and classic kind of Gary Vee says, I follow no one because I follow everyone. But I stop whenever I see your good looking face. Now, I know it's not just because we share the same barber, but you just have a way of being able to drop nuggets in bite sizes. And I'm the guy that consumes my information in bite size. I want to quickly go back to your education before we go into who you are and what you're doing. Did you always learn like that in bite size, or were you a great kind of deep diver?
I think it's probably for sure that I'm one of those guys that I have a very short attention span, and I have a tendency to gravitate towards, to your point, kind of bite-sized nuggets, things that I'm with for sure a quick start. So I want to get the information, understand it as best I can. I'm willing to go out and make some mistakes, but if I gravitate to something, if I get something, I'm usually not one that's going to hang around for much longer to figure out, and that could be a good thing or a bad thing, but that's certainly the way I process information.
Good. Now, for any of you that don't know Kent out there, and I always hate waiting to the end, KentClothier.com. It's very easy. Look the guy up. You'll be grateful you did. But anyone out there, the Ed Miletts, the Jim Quicks, the Roland Frasers, the Dan Fleischmans, all of these stages you've graced. And if there's any kind of stage that's got any kind of real estate connection whatsoever, for you, I'll go as far as to say, if you haven't been on the stage, then it's because you had another event going on and you couldn't make it. But you are the go-to when it comes to real estate. Why? How have you been able to define yourself so much at a level in that industry?
I think it has more to do with probably exactly what we just talked about. I'm a guy that I've been there. I've done that. I've been very successful in real estate. I've been around for a long time. This is not a game that a lot of people have a tremendous amount of longevity in, right? This is, whether it's especially when you're in the education space and trying to teach other people to do things, this is typically a young man's game, and people that are in it for, I would argue, in a lot of times, a lot of the wrong reasons. They're in there to just kind of make a quick hit, make a quick buck, and kind of in, out, whatever. That's very common. And it's never been anything that I've ever been about. I've always been about, hey, this is my journey. This is what I do. Here's all the mistakes I've made. Here's all the successes I've had. I'm more than willing to share with you guys what that looks like, either way, from either side. And that's just served me, right? I mean, I think in one of those things where in a world filled with mediocrity, it's not that hard to look great. And it's one of those things where I get a lot of recognition and adoration, to your point, asked to speak a lot of places. And it's not because I'm great or exceptional. It's just because quite frankly, it's just been diluted down to such, mediocrity and nonsense out there that when somebody's actually coming at it and speaking the truth and telling people exactly how it is and how to achieve things, it kind of looks like, something miraculous. And then I would argue it's just not. It's just common sense kind of stuff that happens to look pretty remarkable.
I'll take that. But I also think you're playing the humble card a bit. There's a lot of people out there that are brilliant at things that can't communicate their brilliance. You've got an ability to be able to communicate with people. And we've already said that you like to educate in bite size. Do you feel as though not only were you successful learning to be able to communicate what you did to an audience. Did you find that was a learning process, or were you just a natural from word go?
I think it's a little of both, quite frankly. I mean, I think that at a very, very young age, early in my 20s, I had hundreds of employees that worked for me, all in the sales capacity. It was my job as their leader to motivate them, to speak, into them what I wanted to happen. And so when you do that every single day in front of hundreds of people, there's a lot of things that get broken down and built back up. You understand how to articulate a message. You understand how to be an effective communicator. And then equally, as I started to understand that role, late in my 20s and then into my 30s, I took it a lot more seriously and educated myself, because there's a big difference between being able to motivate a team, motivate an organization, move your troops, get your tribe moving, effectively, being like a pastor in front of a church, right? Being very articulate from the front of the stage is a gift in and of itself, and it is a skill that can be learned. Being able to do that and also move people to do commerce with you is a whole nother level to it, right? And so in my late 20s and in my 30s, I started to perfect my skills in helping people to get up out of their seat and come and do business with me. And that's what I started to take very seriously. And that ultimately, I don't do that anymore and haven't done it probably the last 8 years. That process of learning how to do that made me an even better speaker than I already was, right? Because I started to understand that it was a skill, that being able to enunciate, being able to understand the path you're trying to take an audience, be able to communicate effectively, to your point, and keep the motion going. That's small bite-sized chunks. Keep things moving at a pace that makes sense for an audience. I mean, that is a skill, brother. I mean, that's something that you absolutely, if you want to be a great communicator, you have to learn how to do that. And I definitely think some of it came to me naturally. Some of it I perfected in my job, and then ultimately I even educated myself more.
Yeah, because there's a big difference when you're talking to a group of people that are employed by you, or their pay is actually dependent on the leads you give them or the branding or marketing you do. There's a big difference between talking to them and talking to an audience that are there for maybe the next speaker after you or the speaker before you, and you just suddenly turn up in the horizon. So there's a big difference there. But
100%, big difference.
You've been able to conquer that well. Would you class yourself as an extrovert or an introvert?
100% an introvert. Yeah.
Now,
and it's the reason I do what I do, quite frankly.
That's the reason you've always hid from me every time I've tried to find you at an event. We were joking about this before. We are in so many of the same circles. Anyone could be confused by thinking that we're not always together, but it's ridiculous. We've missed each other so many times.
Passing in a night, more than a few times.
I'm a great believer that I'm on the introvert scale, and I come out of my shell when I need to do this, when I need to do an event. Other than that, leave me at home. I'll ride my bikes, play with my dogs, don't want to be disturbed. There's so much misconception that people think to be a good speaker, you have to be an extrovert. How do you get over it?
I would argue 180 degrees opposite of that. And what I mean by that is, if you think about it, I mean, I'm sure there's some clinical definition that I have no, purview to, but I would identify as an introvert. And because I would say it this way, if you put me in a room with 7 strangers that I don't know, it will be the most uncomfortable that I will have ever been in my entire life, right? If you expect me to walk up to somebody and try to carry on a conversation, it is a horrible experience for me, and it creates an enormous amount of anxiety. And so I avoid those types of situations any way I possibly can. Now, if you put me on a stage where I'm not actually talking to somebody, right? I am conveying a message. I'm kind of talking at thousands, tens of thousands of people. That is very comfortable for me, because I don't have to create this personal connection. I understand my assignment. I understand what I have to do. I'm out there to try to create, again, that energy that I'm trying to create. I'm not really there to try to connect at a one-on-one level with somebody. Now, the irony is I clearly appreciate that, there's tens of thousands of people out there, if not more, that feel like they have a personal connection to me because of what I've shared on stage. I get that. But that's, it's just different for me personally. The same thing can be true about what you and I are doing right now, right? I do a lot of video training. I do a lot of social media. I do a lot of Zoom calls. And again, I'm not sitting. This is kind of a forced interaction. This is one of those things where it's much easier for us to connect like this than it is if we were at like a mastermind and I don't know you and you don't know me, but one of us has got to break the ice and go talk to you. It won't be me. I can assure you. And so I would argue that I do what I do because I'm introverted. Because I get to hide behind a computer screen, if you will, and I get to hide behind a camera, and I get to be on stage where I'm not having to really make myself vulnerable at a one-on-one level. Now, the irony of all of that is that the moment that you're in my circle or I'm in yours, I will be one of your best and dearest and most friends that you'll ever have. And I will move heaven and earth for you. I'll do anything I can to help you in any possible way I can. That's the relationships I have, but it is a challenge for me to create that initial environment.
Yeah, I always have. I never attend the cocktail receptions of any event at the beginning. There's always hey, you can turn up the night before and register, and there's a welcome reception. Never been to those things. They give me a rash. I don't want to do it. So it's funny you should say that.
It's hard. And I know that's, some of that is a self-limiting belief. I clearly know that if I have to go into those situations that I'm more than capable of doing what I need to do, I just prefer not to.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So I was at an event last week, actually, and I was speaking, and there were people there saying about being introverted, and I was having this conversation, and they were saying that's why I don't do social. Now, me and you, we do a lot of social. We're both good friends with Dan Fleischman, who's probably one of the kings of social. How important is social in your growth and distribution of your brand and education and teaching?
I would argue it is probably, if not the most critical thing, it is certainly right at the top of that list somewhere. Look, here's what everybody is going to form an opinion. There's two things going on. Either one, they're not talking, you're not a part of any of the conversation, right? Which is most people. Or two, you're part of the conversation and you can have a choice there. You either can control largely what that narrative is about you, or you can let somebody else control that narrative. And the way I look at social is I want to control the narrative. I want to make sure that the things that are being said about me, the messages that I'm trying to convey to the broad community, to the public, where I'm trying to bring value to, potential prospects into my world, or whatever the case may be, I want to be in control of that narrative. Because one thing's for sure, if they're talking about me at all, they are 100% going to go and look for me on social. And so if I'm not there, and if I'm not controlling that message, right, they're for sure going to go to YouTube. They're for sure going to go to Instagram. They're for sure going to go to Facebook, right? LinkedIn. That is 100%. If I'm at any part of the conversation, somebody's going to go and try to find more information about me. We all do this. And if that's going on, and I know that to be true, then shouldn't I play an active role in controlling the narrative? Because God forbid somebody goes and starts looking me up, and one, I'm not there, or two, I have no idea what the hell's even being said about me. That makes no sense. And that's just the world we live in. You can choose to not participate. That doesn't mean that you're still not a part of the conversation. It just means that you are not controlling any part of the conversation.
So what's the social platform that everyone needs to be on?
I would argue that clearly Facebook, and by virtue of Facebook, Instagram are probably the two primary places where, it really depends on what you're trying to accomplish. If you are trying to, say, kind of top of mind, if you will, I think you probably can't just relegate yourself to one. I think that's probably pretty dangerous in the world, because 5 years ago, nobody was talking about TikTok. Today, it's about to overtake Instagram, right? It doesn't take long. It moves at this. So I think that for sure, you should be a part of the conversation on Instagram and Facebook. And then I would argue right behind it that YouTube and TikTok should be a part of what you're trying to accomplish, especially if you're looking to get broader reach. TikTok has, the biggest viral component of any platform that is out there right now. It will expose you to more people than you've ever been exposed to with the way their algorithm works. And then I think, again, kind of picking your lane. If you are really just trying to focus on business and business people, then LinkedIn certainly needs to be a part of that conversation. But at a minimum, Facebook and Instagram's got to be there.
All right. And what about Pinterest? Do you ever touch any of that?
I don't. And now it's not that it's a decision one way or the other. It's not a strategy. It's just that we have gained as we have got more opportunity than we could really get to, but based on these 4 or 5 platforms that we really play on. And I mean, we play hard on YouTube, we play hard on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Those 4 platforms, have helped to continue to control what we need, what I want my tribe to believe about me, and what I want them to believe we can do for them, right? And really trying to benefit them and bring value to them. My community, I'm sure there's a big part of my community that lives on LinkedIn or Pinterest, but I haven't found it necessary to go there just yet. Doesn't mean I shouldn't. I just haven't.
All right. Yeah. So what I was trying to get at, and you walked into it beautifully, was get on multiple platforms. And you said quite openly, you shouldn't just be on one, because at the end of the day, this is a platform, it's a consumption point. And people are listening to totally different radio stations, totally different TV stations, but they're all hearing the same music and the same news. But you need to be on different platforms. So you're on different platforms, and that makes total sense. What's your focus today?
My focus today is I have figured out, as I've gotten later in years, I've been very fortunate. I put myself in a situation to where a lot of my businesses are fairly streamlined and run operationally the way they're supposed to, and hit the objectives that we've set out for them, which allows me the opportunity to focus on something that I get a great deal of pleasure on. That's really kind of privately coaching high-level CEOs and working in our real estate investment masterminds. We've got a couple of them that are very, very successful. I really find a lot of pleasure at this point in my life elevating the conversations, right? I mean, and having conversations with guys like yourself and Roland, and as you mentioned, Dan and Ed Milet, and a lot of other guys that I get a great deal of fulfillment and enjoyment out of. I get these just elevated conversations, bigger topics, bigger problems, bigger opportunities, things, to really be thinking about, as opposed to, I'm just not in that phase of my life where I'm out there starting a business from scratch, or what's the next, marketing strategy I want to work on. I mean, I've really found myself where I'm highest and best use of my time is working with high level people and helping them achieve amazing things.
How important was it for you to start mixing around with people that played a bigger game than you? Well, let me ask you this. Did you ever play small?
I would argue I've never played small. It's a great question.
But did you ever have an inferiority complex? Because we've always said that there's this imposter syndrome when you walk into a room. Yeah. Did you ever have that?
Yeah, it's fun. That's a great question, man. I'm glad it's really interesting. I have never seen, and I still don't, right? But I have never actually seen myself as a quote unquote big deal, right? I've never seen myself as a guru, as any kind of authority. And I don't mean that like trying to be coy and play. I just legitimately have never seen myself that way. So to your point, from an imposter syndrome, I've experienced that. I actually have definitely felt more times than not that, man, am I in the right room? Am I, do I deserve to be sitting at this table, right? Et cetera, et cetera. But I think that's a healthy place to be, right? Because what that's done for me is it's challenged me over the years. I have always been somebody that I think if you compared me to anybody around me in my world, I've always been a high achiever. I've always been somebody, at least entrepreneurially, and sports. I sucked in school, but I was always a guy that was always pushing further, doing more, way outrunning my coverage when it comes to when it comes to anything I was trying to accomplish in my life. But I just thought it was natural, right? I was raised by an entrepreneur. He had a mantra in my life. Good isn't good when great is expected. So I always just believed that I was capable of more. And so it's in my DNA. And so as my businesses started to really excel and do well, and whatever I was touching was doing well, I still didn't feel like I was that guy. I mean, I never felt like I could go and be really great friends with somebody like an Ed Milet, right? Or a Dan Fleischman or Joel Mayer, or you name them, right? Some of the guys that I've now become amazing friends with. I never saw myself that way, but I did challenge myself that, listen, if they're inviting me to be in the room, and if they believe I can bring value to them, and I know that they can bring value to me, then get your ass in the room, go see what it does. Get out, break out of your shell, do it. And by pushing myself into those rooms, I've inevitably grown and achieved more than I ever could have possibly imagined. There's no doubt when you hang around big thinkers and elevate the conversations, your belief system starts to kick in. So, back to my original point, I am just now finally starting to buy into my own kind of, I guess, public persona that, oh man, maybe I deserve a seat at the table. Maybe I am that guy. I just didn't know I was that guy, but maybe all the time everybody's been telling me I'm that guy. Maybe I am officially that guy. And so, but that is a recent development. It's been a long time. That's been brewing for a long time inside me before I actually got there.
I'm wondering, and I don't want to diss on extroverts out there, but I'm wondering if that is how the introvert in you helps you play. Because I've noticed something that when an introvert has to do something that they're uncomfortable with, getting into a room, having a conversation, meeting new people, being on stage, they move with purpose. Yet an extrovert will quite often move with hope. And quite often that hope will be, oh, will they see me? Will I meet there's like a hope expectation. Maybe this will happen. Introverts walk in there with a definite goal. And the conversations that you're having, and I know this for a fact, you've shown up with value. You've proved your stripes. So you sitting there now going, well, maybe I'm starting to believe this now. That's because there are people out there, whether or not you've had direct conversations with them or not, have listened to elements of what you've said, utilize it, and it's created impact for them. So I think that's because of your attitude.
I think that is an amazing observation. I've never actually thought of it that way, but I think you're probably spot on. Like, yes, I move in a very intentional way because it's uncomfortable for me, right? And I want to make sure that it's deliberate. It is affirmative. I know exactly why I'm going in. I know I want to be present. I'm forcing myself to stay right, in a situation that I don't feel 100% comfortable in, but then come out of those situations being much better for it. And to your point, because when you're in it and you're present and your head is not up in the clouds and you're not sitting there, I'm there and trying to bring value to those relationships. And ultimately, again, you turn around and you look up, and now all of a sudden, some of these people that I never thought would be some of my closest friends are people that are like, dude, this is the guy you want to be around. I'm just like, oh,
yeah.
And it was never intentional. It's just, I know I got to be present because it's uncomfortable for me. If I'm not, like, I got to make sure that I'm not just, to your point, as an extrovert, I think I would probably be just kind of all over the boards and kind of bouncing from person to person, but that's just not me. Like, I'm there, right there.
Does that help you within your coaching? You're very well known as a successful coach. You've been successful in the real estate. You were dealing with CEOs. You spoke about that, but the intentional movement of an introvert, does that help you with your coaching practice?
Absolutely. Like, I can tell you that I think you would be hard pressed to find anybody who has worked with me from a coaching perspective, one-on-one, especially some of these high-level CEOs that would tell you that in the presence of me, that they clearly understand they are the most important thing right then, and that I am completely dialed in on their business and work extremely hard to bring, pull out of them what is necessary so that we can collectively create real value for each other, right? So I can show them how to achieve what they're trying to achieve. And that, when you get into the realm where you're coaching high-level CEOs, and these are, 6-figure, 7-figure checks that are coming out, this is This is the big boy stuff, right? You don't get to just kind of throw it in and just kind of get away with any kind of nonsense. Like, you got to absolutely show somebody how to create a return on that investment. You got to absolutely give them highly tangible, actionable things. And that, I would argue, is almost impossible to do if you are not, one, if you don't have the wisdom, you don't have the experience, you don't have all the scars, but two, if you're not paying very close attention to what the hell's going on.
This is where we get a little bit delicate, so I'll appreciate if you want to sidestep any of this,
Sure.
which I know you won't. We're in a world where people can become an influencer overnight. They've just got to buy the right account, or sink a bunch of money into a bunch of Filipinos that suddenly start liking everything they put on Instagram.
Yep.
So it's very easy that these international, top level coaches are appearing in this social world now. I've always said that before you become an influencer, you should have actually achieved something. That's definitely the way with a coach. A coach needs to have been able to have achieved or proved that their teachings work. And we're in a world now where you see all of these people that don't know how to coach. They lean up against a Ferrari. Everyone goes, oh my shit, I want a Ferrari. And they suddenly start getting involved. So the world of coaching has changed. How do you handle that change and that expectation? Or how should someone also, and there's two questions here, how should someone define that they are getting the right coach?
Well, I will start with the second answer first, right? Is anybody that is willing to coach you, one, it needs to be on a very specific topic. Like, I specialize in showing CEOs how to scale their business and find all the hidden opportunities that are inside of their business, basically bridging the gap from being kind of this hustler CEO where you're kind of running a small business to turn it into something that is enterprise level, right? And how to do that in the right way, whether you're not at the expense of your family and your friends and all the things that actually really do matter. They are the most important things. And I have the resume, right? I can document anything you need me to document. You want me to show you how I built a $2 billion a year company by the time I was 30? I'll show you the docs, right? You want me to show you how I bought thousands of houses? I'll show you the docs. Everything I do in the real estate space is all public record. I have all the scars. You want to go find out, what's some of the biggest failures in my life and how I've fallen down and recovered? Just go to my website, right? If somebody isn't willing to share their failures and the scars they have and the wisdom they gain from those failures, if it's nothing but, hey, in the last year I've done this, or in the last 6 months I've done that, then quite frankly, you have zero business hiring them as a coach, unless it is for a very specific strategy or tactic. I can argue that if somebody has figured out a new hack on Facebook on how to go and grow a group, right, or do something like that, that is highly relevant and I want somebody to teach me how to do that, I want to give them $5, yeah, that's fine, right? You want somebody to go give somebody $100,000 to show them how to go scale a business, and if they've never built what you're trying to build, if they aren't living and the life you want to live, then why would you ever possibly hire them as a coach? And if you do, I would argue this, you deserve everything you get. This is not hard, right? It's not hard. It's not hard to go and we have this amazing tool out there called Google. And if you will actually get off the first page and do just a half a second of research on people, you can find out exactly who the hell people are. And if you can't find anything on them, then you need to run. Because, I mean, how could you possibly expect to get coached on somebody on how to go and create an empire or create this amazing life if there's literally nothing about them on the internet? They haven't been around long enough for them to be on the internet. Yeah. Now, going to the other side of this, it's extremely disappointing, right? That's the world we live in. And it is, unfortunately, everything you said is right on. There are people, and I know a handful of these people. I don't know them personally, but I've had them reach out to me, who I would argue are being highly, highly manipulative, and they are creating authority, and they are creating a story and a backstory and all this other nonsense, and buying accounts and creating millions of dollars and creating all this manufactured social proof to create some momentum in their life, to try to, quite frankly, try to outrun their past. And that is, it's disappointing that that can happen in today's day and age. What's more disappointing to me, though, is that the same point I just made a second ago. I'm more disappointed in that the people that will actually put those people on their stages or continue to give them a platform or elevate these people when they know the truth, when all they have to do is do a little bit of research. I've been very disappointed in some people that I have admired up to this point, that it was a choice that they made, that they knew that the person that was going up there was completely full of crap, and they still chose to put him up. That to me is an integrity issue, and I have a real problem with it. And it's influenced some of my decisions. It's influenced a lot of the people that I, operate with today, because, character is what's revealed when nobody's looking. And man, there's been some people that their character has absolutely been revealed by some of that kind of nonsense. Look, I don't think you can make the nonsense go away. I just think it is what it is, right? You look at any industry out there in the world today, there's always some shyster or some jackass who's screwing it up and, trying to take advantage of certain. That's everywhere. It's prevalent. It's just the world of mediocrity that we live in. Participating in it is a choice.
I love the tag you said there, running away from their past. Going back to what you were saying about your credibility is your education and what you've been through, the good and the bad. Surely your past is your credibility.
100%.
Your intelligence, I would go as far to say, and feel free to slap me the next time you see me, but the beauty about your experience doesn't come from what you did right. It's from what you learned from all the things that you got wrong. And that's where the education is. So running from the past, that's stupid. Own it, learn from it, and expose it and go, hey, shit went wrong. This is what I learned from it. And this is what I did with it.
It's completely, but that's the fallacy of it's everybody's in a hurry to be an influencer. That's the world we live in, right? I mean, if I can acquire X amount of followers, then I could get brands and I could get all this stuff. It's just this nonsense where people don't actually want to do the work. And again, I'm not going to change that environment. That is the environment we live in, right? It's swimming upstream. But what I can tell you is that if you want to create longevity, if you actually want to help people, if you want to bring real value, then by default, your wisdom, your experience, the collective experience of what you've learned by being around others and taking their wisdom as well, all of that is extremely valuable. To try to act like that is not part of the equation, or to try to like I said, outrun it or create a different narrative for whatever reason, is just absolutely one of the dumbest things I've ever seen. It's just ridiculous. It is, hey, I mean, look at me. I would say at 30 years old, I built a $1.8 billion a year company, right? By the time I was 32, I lost the whole thing and was considering suicide. It was one of the worst, most horrible experiences of my life. I don't take pride in sharing that, but I will also tell you, 20 years removed from it, it's where I gained the most power, that wisdom is extremely beneficial to the people that I work with. And to try to act like that isn't in my past is just ridiculous. And I don't care what your past was. I don't care. I mean, everybody's got a past. And and I guarantee you, not everybody sits around and says, man, I've just done everything perfect. I don't know that person. I've never met that person. Right? I've always met people that, you get a beer in them and we're just hanging out, and they'll tell you some stories and you're going to be like, oh my God, I thought my stuff was out of whack. I mean, holy crap. I can't even believe you survived that. I mean, I had a coaching student in yesterday, and he was telling me some of the craziest, greatest stories in his 20s of just dumb things he had done on his journey to becoming a multimillionaire. And I mean, everybody's got that. And so to try to act like that is somehow, you're just trying to sidestep because you want to get to the end result faster and act like you've coached. Oh, look at me. I've coached 25,000 people. You've been in the business for 14 months. How the hell have you coached 25,000 people? Right? That makes zero sense. but you see that kind of nonsense all the time.
Yeah, you really do. You really do. Well, look, we're at our point. We're at our time. I'll be honest with you. I just looked at the clock. I could have just gone on for
Me
probably
too.
another couple of hours. But people can find out about you, get involved with you, stalk you like I do at KentClothier.com. Couldn't get any easier than that. But I am going to warn you, if you're going to get in Kent's circle, then stand up to show up, because I get the idea he's going to see through you real quick. So, Kent, it's been a pleasure and an honor to have you here on the show.
Hey, brother, let's do this again soon.
Look after yourself, pal. Thanks.
Take care, man.